Big Ten predictions. We have waited and waited long enough. How's this thing going to go? We are gearing up for 3 straight here. 3 straight is a streak. At 2 straight, that's not a streak, contrary to what the Chicago papers and the Detroit papers have told you. No. It would be a streak if you won 3 national titles in a row. They could do it. Ohio State got good odds. Penn State closely behind. Oregon third. And then there's a drop-off in the odds to win the Big Ten. And then Oregon third. Michigan way down below Oregon fourth. USC. And then there's a little drop-off again to like your Nebraskas, your Iowas, Indiana, Illinois. I think the last time one of these top 4 did not win this league was like 2015, Michigan State, I want to say. So it's been a little while. Tier 1, I think, is 3 deep. Tier 2, you could say, is just Michigan, and then it's Tier 3, or you could say there is no Tier 2, Michigan's part of Tier 3, or you could say Michigan's part of Tier 1, and still there's no Tier 2. However you want to classify it, I think Michigan's going to be a much different team in November than they are in late August, early September anyway. So here are some things I think I know about the Big Ten as we get into predictions here. Penn State, there are 2 seasons for Penn State this year. And they're 2 different themes, basically. And they're not interested in talking about the first one. The first season for Penn State is, let's make sure everything validates. Let's make sure they are who we think they are. And they will be. They're not going to be a bad team. So they'll be a contender. They'll be favored in just about every game they play, maybe outside of at Ohio State. They're capable of winning all of them. Let's say all that happens. Let's say, for the sake of argument and Jesse's conscience, they even get through to Indianapolis. They win the Big Ten. That's season 1. And that's a good season. That's great. That's not what they're looking for at Penn State. Candidly, this is one of those very unique situations where there is not job security pressure, but there's competitive pressure to go win the national championship. At the very least, win the Big Ten. And even if they do that, that's just when the second season starts. And the second season is basically, okay, Penn State got through the regular season and they were good enough to do that. What if someone does in the playoffs what Ohio State did last year? What if Texas gets in and revs the engine? What if it's a Georgia in there? What if it's an Oregon in there? But they rev the engine and you find out their top-end potential is better than yours. What if your best is A-, but someone's got the talent level to be an A or an A+, and you run up against them in the playoff? That's the second season. I think staff attrition for Ohio State is as big as the roster attrition. That's another thing I think I know. Yeah, Ohio State won a national title last year. Yeah, they're losing a lot to the draft. That's what happens when you're really good. That's the trade-off. But I'm telling you, I know in Columbus they're keenly aware of how good Chip Kelly was, how important he was, how good Jim Knowles was. They don't speak his name anymore, but how important he was. Those guys are gone. And it's not like I don't believe Matt Patricia is able to coach this game, or that I don't believe that when you elevate from within, especially, that you've got, the wherewithal and you've got the system knowledge. Brian Hartline's the new OC there now. It's not that I don't believe that. There's a difference in those guys being good or really good versus them being championship caliber and your program being championship caliber. It'd be one thing if you're elevating those guys and they're coaching a bunch of players who are just returning, but you got so much newness everywhere. That's part of the fun. That's part of the challenge for Ryan Day. That's part of the fun. You remember when we were up there in spring, part of the reason he emphasized, hey, I've got benefit of the doubt on my side now. I asked him, what's the difference? He said, I've got benefit of the doubt on my side now. That's invaluable. Because now you make all these moves and people just assume you know what you're talking about because you won a national championship, whereas before you were an idiot. You got second-guessed 8 days out of the week. The third thing I think I know about this conference, Tier 3 is the story for the Big Ten. Okay, that's why I said you know that Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State in some shape, form, or fashion are the Tier 1 of this conference. Tier 2, is it Michigan or is it nobody? I'm looking at Tier 3, regardless of how you think those first 4 teams pan out. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, USC. I'd throw Washington in there. Those are all teams with win totals of 7.5 to 8.5. And so that's Tier 3 of the conference. Now, historically, meaning the last decade or so, that hasn't mattered because no one in that tier has been a threat to jump up and most of the times bite one of the top teams, but especially contend for the title. Could Nebraska contend for the league title this year? Could USC compete for the league title this year? I don't mean upset someone who could compete for it. I mean outright compete for it, because that's been the difference to me still in the competitive landscape of the Big Ten versus the SEC. SEC competitive depth-wise goes a lot deeper than the Big Ten, or it has. Is that the case this year? The fourth thing, hey, wait just a second. I appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year-round. All right, back to the video. As we talk about Drew Aller, talk about Julian Sayin, Bryce Underwood, the most intriguing quarterbacks in this conference may be on the West Coast. Dante Moore at Oregon, Damon Williams at Washington, and the latter of whom, or whomst, is being talked about even less than the former, and neither of them are being talked about to the degree that the others are. Those two could be bona fide studs this year, and they're not being talked about as much, and it's pretty obvious why, because they play halfway to Russia. And so, Big Ten Media Center being where it is, they're just not going to have the baked-in brand name. They're not going to be the focus in preseason. That's okay, though. I think they're both really good. I got very little doubt about either one of them, and they may fundamentally impact this league title race. And the fifth thing I think I know is that patience will pay off for Bryce Underwood. Now, that may not mean that you win 10 games this year. But I do think patience will pay off in the sense that that dude's really good now. That's why he's going to win the job up there. He will be really good as ever long as he's at Michigan. I also think that you've got this whole NCAA thing behind you now. I don't know how worried they were about that, but it's behind them now. You just get to know, okay, we can see as far as the eye can see on the landscape. Future is ours. And we got this quarterback, but the point being, if they start to trend up middle of the season and later, think about what that does for the roster construction of the 2026 team and beyond. If they win in 2025, to me, it's a bonus. I may not think that way if I were a Michigan fan, but I'm just sitting down here in Nashville. I would think, dude, if we can win 9 or 10 games and surprise people, that's great. But I'm thinking 2026 and beyond because I could win another national title with that guy. A few of the favorite win totals I have in the Big Ten. I've bet these, so we're on all these. We've talked about some of them so far. Nebraska, over 7.5 wins. I cannot believe this number is still available at FanDuel. Nebraska, over 7.5 wins. We've got it graded as the easiest schedule in Big Ten play. I don't think the market is properly pricing in the offensive elevation that's going to happen here. I think most people expect, Dylan Raiola another year in. Maybe people know Dana Holgerson is there, maybe they don't. I just think beyond that, man, the supporting cast, like the wide receiver room here, the tailback room, I think that the overall elevation of this offense is not being properly priced in. They are going to fly past 7.5 wins. I firmly believe that. I believe the opposite about Wisconsin. As much as I love the alpaca farms up there, I believe that Wisconsin under 5.5 wins. As much as I believed it in the spring, I still believe it now. We've got that graded as the toughest strength of schedule in the Big Ten. They face one team in conference play with worse odds than them. They play 9 conference games, famously, if you haven't listened to Coach Sig lately. 9 conference games up there. They only play 1 conference game against a team with odds worse than them. They play Bama in out-of-conference play. And I don't really know what the identity of the team is still. So I'm going under on Wisconsin, and I'm going under on Michigan as well. As much as I believe in the future of the team, I could just see 8-4 this year. And frankly, I could see an 8-4 that kind of goes like last year, where you scale up towards the end of the year. Who knows if that includes a win over Ohio State or not. But I could just see finishing strong at Michigan State, Purdue, at Northwestern, at Maryland. Even if you lose close to Ohio State, you just finish strong. Bryce Underwood got better and better as the weeks went on. You finish 8-4, okay. And everyone's excited about next year. But I'm going under 8.5 with Michigan win total. Here we go. Conference championship matchup. I've got as a rematch of the regular season. This game, I believe, is going to happen in week 5 in Happy Valley. Oregon goes to Penn State, and Penn State will be favored in that game, and it'll be a whiteout. I think we're going to get a rematch of that game in Indianapolis. And I've got Penn State versus Oregon for the Big Ten championship, and I've got Penn State over Oregon for the Big Ten championship. So James Franklin taking home the Big Ten crown. That gets them easily a top 4 seed in the playoffs. So they'll have a first-round bye, and the runway will be set up for him. Oregon's probably in the playoff too, just, not in that 1 seed, which didn't do them any favors last year anyway, so whatever. But I got Penn State over Oregon. I think it's a rematch of the regular season. Ohio State's very much in this. I'm not down on them. I think it actually may come down to tiebreaker that decides who goes. And my sleeper in this conference that I didn't really talk about, Michigan State, I think, is a much better team than the market will give them credit for. I think they're the kind of team, since they play all the contenders basically, that bites one of them, but themselves does not have the consistency and performance to compete for the league title this year. Just keep an eye on them. You know, kind of like a pest. This keeps buzzing in your ear. That's Michigan State to me this year.